Welcome back to TeleSUR English and join us as we go live to Caracas, Venezuela, where the president of that nation, Nicolas Maduro, addresses the forum and a working meeting with the exchange of technology and knowledge. Let's listen.
De poder cultural, de poder económico, de poder integral, que nos ponga en el ritmo
that allow us to be on a level to be walked this 21st century and the upcoming. This 21st century, from a geopolitical point of view, is a century that it's changing more and more. It's moving. The fight for a new world order, for a world without imperialism, without hegemonism, with independent and free peoples. This fight for a world with cooperation, for a world without wars and with a world with peace, is more and more intense. And what we can see, specifically after the COVID-19 pandemic and the current events, is that with every more strength, it is clear the rise of a new world, of a world without imperialism and hegemonies, a multipolar and multi-center world, a world where everyone can see with equality, a world where we can achieve that everyone is respected, our identity and our political ideas. This new world is already, and Latin America and the Caribbean must be at the level of this new world that is rising, and be present as a unitary bloc with an independent identity and their own proposals. It is a dream, some might say. It's difficult to achieve, others will say. And some will think that a world like this is impossible. And I can say with pleasure that this world already exists and is rising, and the Latin America and the Caribbean is part of this new world. That's why it's so important that from Latin America and the Caribbean, from a unity perspective and diversity, respecting our beautiful diversity, moving forward in constructing new diversity. That's why it's so important that CELAC is something I learned over the years. Dear Mr. Prime Minister Gonsalves, President of CELAC, I knew Ralph when I was Foreign Minister when Commander Hugo Chavez was alive since 2006. And since I have been president for over 10 years, 16 or 17 years in these spaces, helping to build these spaces, watching the birth of CELAC, and how it's taking new strength. I can I can supplement my expertise, and the most important thing is, I think, and I say this in front of most important people from Latin America and the Caribbean. One of the most important elements is that unity of our public policies, of our actions, has the capacity to impact the social life, the economic life, the public life of all people. It has the capacity to affect immediately the life of our people. What would have been if throughout the pandemic and the most difficult years, 2020 and 2021, our community would have been a unitary center to research. If we have a point of communication and coordination to see experiences and political and public policies and treatments against the pandemic and the different variants, to see the rise of the vaccines, that would have been the Cuban people that was capable of creating 5 vaccines. They were extraordinary, and we applied them here in Venezuela with extraordinary results. We were recently in Brazil, exactly like a month ago, and I said to the presidents there from South America, what would have been if South America, if we would have had a center to face the pandemic? It would have been another reality. We have lived another reality. And here we can discuss different topics. That's why it's so important, this meeting, this conference of CELAC about science and technology, and the higher authorities in this regard is present here from Latin America and the Caribbean. We have to discuss several topics, but I dare to say before you and before our president to propose that from this meeting is created the proposal and the agenda of the most important topics that, so from CELAC, sooner or later, we can create a Latin American and Caribbean Center to research and applied research for our 33 members and peoples. A center where we can discuss and see all the breakthroughs and an agenda that you will be able to set. Science and technology must be at the forefront of the projects of our continent. Science, technology, and applied innovation must be at the forefront to find solutions to the most present problems that have arisen because of climate change, all the different consequences to the weather, for agriculture and health. When it is said that climate change that is going to get worse in the upcoming years, without our intention to foresee a disaster, but to tell the truth that arises from scientific studies and the reality. The rupture of the ecological balance in our planet, that we, the people from the South, suffer the most. Science investigations, technology, and investigations to produce food, all the essential food that our people need, the development of research and science and applied to health, to education, to industry development, to robotics, to artificial intelligence. There are many fields, there are many necessities and priorities. And I'm sure that if each of us, we have important developments in these areas, if we unite our efforts of the greatest minds of our scientists and our scientists and innovators, I'm sure that Latin America and the Caribbean very soon will be at the forefront of this 21st century. I'm sure that some will say that these are dreams, but these are concrete dreams to transform the reality of our countries, to move forward in constructing true independence, independence in knowledge, in culture, in science and technology. That is the true independence of the 21st century. At the end of the road, independence is led by the capacity we have that we can live without depending on anyone, without being blackmailed by anyone under any circumstances, knowing that what we have been through, we Venezuelans, throughout the pandemic. CELAC knows very well, because we have denounced this in several opportunities. And in 2020 and 2021, more than 900 coercive measures and sanctions were imposed against Venezuela. We were pursued, and laboratories that produce vaccines, and they were notified that they will be able to sell vaccines to Venezuela. And we were in a very tough position with an undying question about what to do. Luckily, several bright minds and very valuable people, they solved the situation. And therefore, pharmaceutical enterprises from the West, they didn't sell us anything, and we managed to acquire the vaccines that our people need. And we apply a very successful model to protect the people. And this made us rethink the need to break against any weakness and any disadvantage of our countries against the West, to build scientific and cultural headquarters, and even more if we can build them with unity, as I'm sure it will be done. I'm positive of the high conscience of the scientific community in Latin America and the Caribbean, of the great love they have for their own country and from our homeland. And I'm sure that from this first meeting we will see greater results and decisions, and we will begin to head with unity to build knowledge and scientific knowledge and innovation that reaffirm our independence, dignity, and sovereignty of Latin America and the Caribbean. Welcome. And I give the floor to President of CELAC, Raf Gonsalves.
Autoridades en el ámbito científico y tecnológico de la innovación, que ha sido convocado por el presidente constitucional Nicolás Maduro y que tiene lugar justamente desde la casona cultural Aquiles Nazoa, con la participación del presidente constitucional Nicolás Maduro, también del primer ministro de San Vicente y las Granadinas, Ralph Gonsalves, en este contexto afianzando pues la identidad de los pueblos de América Latina y el Caribe.
And now in this gathering for technology and knowledge exchange, scientific knowledge in Caracas, Venezuela, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonsalves, takes the floor and addresses the participants and the attendees. But prior, we had an intervention of the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, who was referring to the need for regional knowledge exchange. Also, he was referring to scholar, academic, and practical knowledge in a way to cover up all the areas and all the needs of the region and also the bloc. He also stressed that this way paves the path or opens the path for the exchange in the region and also the self-reliance in terms of knowledge, and it cuts the codependence with the imperialist and Western and hegemonic ways of knowledge that also historically and systematically had ensured the steal of the talent in this zone of the world, and also the use of the technology to oppress and to dominate and to enhance neocolonialism over Latin America and the Caribbean. In this case, the president of Venezuela, he had joined this meeting and addressed the meeting, and also was referring to other topics that were addressed to during the meeting and the gathering of South American heads of state in Brasilia on May this year. As he was saying, knowledge and exchange between the academies and universities of all the nations in this region is prior and is a pillar of the movement for the true freedom and the true development of Latin America and the Caribbean. The president of Venezuela was also referring to the need for not only the exchange of knowledge, but also the true will for global and regional development, the true will of the governments and the allocation of resources and the allocation of all the needs and the urgent supplies for this development of knowledge and the exchange of technology. He was referring that Latin America and the Caribbean has a tremendous potential in several fields of the knowledge and of the application of this accumulated technology and scientific knowledge in this case. He was referring to mining exploitation, to environmental crisis solutions, and also to artificial intelligence and other fields that could be developed in the region and that could bring true wellness and prosperity and also well-being for the region. Now let's listen to the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonsalves, who addresses the presence.
We have shared experiences, and for some time we have discussed these experiences. Now these shared experiences must be translated into shared experiences, and these expressions, so things can be achieved in the real world. When producing and creating, we must have to build the correct institutions created on their own agenda. There are some that taking the lead, but we have to involve. We have to build and integrate our civilizations in Latin America and the Caribbean. If we look around this room, if we keep our eyes open, you can realize that the Caribbean and Latin America, and as Jose Marti said, our America, we are like a symphony. We are the sounds of our indigenous people. We are the melody of Europe, and with the rhythm of Africa. We have the dances of Asia and our own songs, our own music. This make up this symphony. And as every symphony, from time to time, there are dissonances, and which are the Latin American and the Caribbean civilizations. This is due to the genius of our people. They have managed to solve these differences through culture and everyday behavior and changes in our behavior. The way to resolve these differences these have taken and is reflected in parliaments and in the courts, and it is where these differences are resolved in an effective way. When integrating our civilizations, we have to ensure that integration it's organic and our mechanics. When we have an organic integration, the weakness and strength, the individual units, these are dissolved in just as a whole, that something new will rise, something different, something that is better than the individual parts. But this is a process. This is not going to happen overnight, because when you heat water in your kitchen, it takes several minutes until this water is transformed in. It is a process, and that's why social and political process takes longer. In the midst of contradictions, these constellations of factors, and in this process, in this solidarity and unity process, we do not allow that others can define for us what our solution must be, even if we can borrow from other civilizations, other contexts, and we can adapt what we can see fit for us. We always try to find solutions to solve our problems with the correspondent and throughout solidarity, because without this, we won't get anywhere. Bolivar taught us this, as well as Jose Marti, and several other leaders have taught us this. CELAC was created, for those who are very young and don't know this, the idea of CELAC didn't arise in the 21st century. There is a long history. From the founding fathers, from the independent movements in the Caribbean and in Latin America. But an important conjunction arose at the beginning of the 21st century. You remember that was the moment a triumph of a particular way of life. This triumph was that the United States of America gave us. We all be like the United States. And there was, for a while, after the collapse of the centralized economy that was called communism, and there was unipolarity. The people around the world didn't like this idea, even in Latin America. And that's why we said, well, we don't do more things together. That's why in 28, President Lula gathered all of us, including former President Chavez, in Bahia. These people were the leaders of their own countries. I was also there, because I have been present there since over 22 years. Well, Lula took a sabbatic year, but he's back. when we were discussing about the rebirth of CELAC and the thrill that this created. This is nothing strange. One of the greatest writers from the Caribbean and Latin America, a Nobel Prize from Mexico, Octavio Paz, in one of his most famous poems, he said the black stalk, it grew and rebirthed again. But in this case, CELAC was born and was left behind a little while and then rebirthed again. So we are going until the limits of our possibilities, and we are fighting unlimited elements. And we must raise the stage where Latin America and the Caribbean, our civilization, must be ours. This will be our home, everybody's home. It won't be a specific home. This home will be an irrevocable condition of the mind, of our mind. It must be a reflection of our bones and our heart. We must have these experiences that must turn into institutions. There have been several chances in this sense, but we must build the basis, the institutions within CELAC. That's why I support very strongly of a permanent secretary of CELAC. Many of the countries that are represented in this organization, and I think unanimously, except for a few countries that must be persuaded, but unless we create a base, a clear institutional base that help us to strengthen our work, that is a shared experience, we will always be left behind. For example, there is a subject that remains in the back of the mind of our people. There are some that say, if we do this, CELAC will replace. This organization has other purposes and other functions different from CELAC. And CELAC unites Latin America and the Caribbean. It unites our families. We cannot ignore the presence of the United States. If we do so, we can incur in these infantile fantasies. We are here geographically. We cannot move from here. We must have relations with the United States. It's one of the strongest countries in the world. But now, this doesn't mean that we have to play that because the United States is the most powerful country in the world. We must engage in proper ways to achieve where it's possible and to resist in creative ways, and to do so in a mature manner, in a way that reflects our characteristic and this is a little bit to explain what we have done since our presidency began in January. We held several meetings. President Nicolas Maduro said that I have written more letters to heads of state and government than any other president of CELAC before. And I said sometimes that I have to write more. And sometimes I say why I write so many letters so often. But what we have done as a small country, that for the first time, an English-speaking country from the Caribbean is presiding this organization. But we promised that we would do our work in an inclusive way. And in this matter, we held several meetings with the finance minister in Chile, we held a meeting from environmental ministers in Costa Rica. There's going to be a meeting in Mexico between foreign ministers. We are preparing this meeting. There's going to be a meeting regarding food security in Guyana. This meeting regarding science and technology in Venezuela. And we must conclude. I understand that what I've been told, that after 10 days in Africa, Paris and London, but President Nicolas Maduro asked me to be here today. I just changed my clothes yesterday and I came here. And I go to St. Vincent and the Grenadines this evening. There's a tropical storm that hit us, and I must go there and attend my people who has been affected by this storm. We are working as I have been advised to create an agreement about which country corresponds to the pro-temporary presidency of CELAC in 2025. I made a proposal. We have been working in a structural manner, but we are trying to create this. In all these topics, we have a mandate that we must to obey. Next month, we have a very important meeting, a very important summit with the European Union on July 17th and 18th. And I'm sure you have seen this draft. It is not easy, but as Evangelical says, we hope that God help us. We will get to an agreement. And we have meetings with the African Union that is important to finish this meeting with countries that have held the presidency, like Argentina, and all these countries that have led this organization recently. And we want to rule following your instructions, and that's why we are working with the African Union, with the Arab League, with China and the Middle East, with Russia, with the United States. We are going to meet with all of them. The United States, and I want to illustrate this subject. In CELAC, we have CELAC, and we have the Summit of the Americas. A critical issue that must be discussed in Latin America and the Caribbean is migration. For example, in Los Angeles, they met, but they didn't invite neither Cuba, Venezuela, nor Nicaragua. And they discussed the migration issue. The president of Honduras was not present. And it is a very important country when you want to discuss migration. And this was because the exclusion of 3 of our brotherly nations. But we have to discuss with the U.S. about migration. We also have to talk to them about matters that we want to control. For example, Mexico wants a space station. We have to discuss this issue. Why in space, and these are elemental issues for countries. We know there will be future pandemics. We need to regulate medical and pharmaceutical agencies in the area. That's why Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina, they have pharmaceutical industries. But you have to wait for the FDA approval. That gives you the approval. We must create our own agency. We must share common experiences. It must be shown in shared experiences, not spoken words, but rather institutions, so we can achieve important things. We need to work together in science and technology for the reasons that President Nicolas Maduro already discussed. If we are going to coordinate this, we need an institution that coordinates other similar institutions. The world has a body of knowledge. That it doesn't mean that if we create an institution, it means that we are going to isolate scientific knowledge. This is against what we want to do. But we must do what we need to do to defend our own interests and according to our own intentions. All civilizations historically, since commercial agriculture began, applied science and technology was used. And these elements as being key for the evolution of the civilization, and we must do the same here. I think you get the general idea about what we want to do. There's a lot of work to do, I know this. I don't want to take any more of your time. But I would like to end this speech saying that we have an abundance of writers in Latin America and the Caribbean. And I would like to finish with a US poet, Robert Frost. And I shall be saying this with to all different people, and I choose less difficult. We must choose the less walked path, and this would we mean anything for unity and independence of our nations in Latin America and the Caribbean. This is the message I bring to Caracas. And from this, we will make possible that science and technology can straighten, that there is an structure and an institute that arise from this agenda for good planning. We have plenty of resources among our countries. There are some countries that can provide more resources than others, but everyone will make a contribution. And when we begin to discuss which one is going to contribute, it must be resolved. Because I defend the Aristotle's principle that equality and proportions must be in relation with our capacities. But first, we must have clarity regarding about what we want to do. What we cannot do is to violate our future. And if we do so, we must know the present is the past, and the past has sometimes been the result of the mistake of our fathers. And we must add something new so there's no mistakes that we bring to the future. What do we have to do so as to not jeopardize our future? We must talk to our forefathers, with our sons and daughters, with the aim of and throughout time to create something solid. And everyone that is here today, we know that the fever in our history had made us to achieve commitments. Those who don't want to understand that biology is part of history, you will always need to to get middle ground, a commitment. And with this, we can understand what is the real objective. Is to achieve concrete results for everyone. But if we create a commitment, we must stand firm with our principles. That is part of unity and solidarity in Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you very much.
Ciencia, tecnología e innovación.
Lo dijimos. Ahora les toca a ustedes.
Now it's your turn.
Vamos a una foto oficial, ¿no?
We're going to take an official
por su
picture.
atención.
Thank you very much for your attention.
Reunión que se instala a partir de este lunes 26 de junio en los espacios de la CELAC.
And in this occasion, this is the CELAC reunion on technology and scientific exchange as the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro Moros, addressed the participants. During the event, the head of state referred to the need to use modern and nowadays tools to bolster common knowledge and regional mechanisms and set the foundations of regional cooperation. The head of state stressed the need for a regional center that provides scholar and practical knowledge for Latin America and the Caribbean, of course, and finds self-reliable solutions for regional issues such as environmental crisis, food production, industry development, robotics, artificial intelligence, and many other fields to guarantee the true independence. For his part, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonsalves, referred to the need for institutional cooperation and regional integration while praising the foundations and mixtures that gave way to Latin American culture, which are bigger than differences. He stressed the need for organic integration and not force one, and to find sustainable and suitable solutions to our regional issues. Gonsalves recalled the need for authenticity and to respect the autonomous and native cultures and to avoid copying hegemonic models that limits access to knowledge and science. He also called for governments to turn experiences into institutions to set the basis for a regional development. Gonsalves stressed that Latin America and the Caribbean cannot ignore the U.S., but to find creative resistance strategies to face its hegemony. He announced other side events celebrated the 50th anniversary of CARICOM, such as security meeting in Guyana after the current meeting for the scientific exchange concludes, as well as other meetings of the bloc in July with the African Union and other regional blocs. Gonsalves also recalled cooperation with other allies, such as China, Middle Eastern countries, and Russia, and how scientific exchange was key in combating the COVID-19 pandemic. Lastly, he said that science and technologies must be at the top of all governments' agendas to ensure real growth and future for the region. We will have more news and other details in upcoming news briefs. Stay with us.